This one is prompted by Maurice Berman's chapter The Basic Fault in his book Coming to Our Senses. At the beginning of this chapter, Berman brings up the example of a family gathering where the momentary onset of silence is described as a disruption of the cozy atmosphere of togetherness, and the resulting disjointed experience is implied to be not only awkward but as also testifying to something negative, to something disturbing, to something deferred or repressed, to a lingering sense of emptiness, actually, at the core of the situation. And when this rupture occurs, the sense of emptiness that suddenly surfaces may indicate something about the nature of our protocols of going about the business we call everyday life. Because uncomfortable moments like this silence at the gathering, seem to be constantly attempted to be avoided, or to be avoided, to be kept at bay. And we do this by various forms of distractions, like negotiating the body image in the mirror, or searching for the best clothes to wear for the gathering, or exchanging hollow smiles at the gathering, or exchanging stories about one another, and trivial things like that. So this is the topic I would like to talk about: distractions. How pervasive distractions are in our lives. So the most powerful form or technology of distraction is the media, the babysitter of many generations now. I remember a few years back when the war on error was in full swing. I wrote a few lines because I always like to fool around with English, the English language. I wrote a few lines about how the actual weapon of mass destruction was perhaps, and always is when abused, the weapon of mass distraction, which is the media. Now it goes without saying that the media have a very strong effect in shaping our experience of the world. But I think it also should be noted that the media are not necessarily negative. In the way it collapses distance and potentiates my communication with you at this moment is very positive. The problem arises when the media are abused, I think. But I think that distractions are not only caused or triggered or nurtured by the media, but by various forms of activities we engage in our everyday life. Because I'm always engaged reflectively or pre-reflectively in some form of an activity or actions, be it externally oriented or internally oriented action. In a sense, all my actions are distractions, in that I am either absorbed or immersed in actual concrete activities, or I am occupied or preoccupied by emotional, psychological activities or conceptual abstractions even. So, in other words, there seems to be a constant desire of being occupied, to be kept occupied by something, by some project or some engagement with the world. Think about it. The way I am talking to this camera right now, and the way I will upload it later, and I will check the comments and feedback if there will be any. and the way you are paying attention and listening to me right now, that all shows how we are involved in this project of YouTubing. And we do other things as well. We watch television sometimes, we read newspapers, we read books, we write poems, we read all sorts of things, we go out with friends, we visit relatives, we visit or go out to movies or restaurants, we buy all sorts of gadgets to play around, technological playthings, we have mobile phones and things like that. Or we listen to music, we fall in love, we nurture children, we are trying to be perfect in our careers, we are working on a project, yes. What else? We are rebelling against the institutional structures, which is sometimes helpful, but not always. So we do all sorts of things. We are always engaged in some form of activity or interaction with the world. But these examples were mainly externally oriented, about how my attention is externally oriented. But other times when I just sit down in my room and look out the window, or lay down on my bed and look at the ceiling, in those moments I am preoccupied by some feeling or emotion, or some train of thought can easily carry me along, or I think about the silence or the emptiness, or about how everything is about distractions. So it's a very pervasive element of our lives. It's like, to use a bad simile, it's like as if I was a bush with many leaves and bands and ribbons on my branches that were kept astir by the winds flowing through these branches. And the colorful play of these leaves and ribbons kept me distracted, and this fantasy of scintillation upstairs distracted my attention, as if it distracted my attention from my actual being in the world. And this is what Berman drives at, I think, that our embodiedness is not fully actualized in its potentials, in its kinesthetic potentials. And I will do a part 2 about how it relates to Douglas Harding's notion of headlessness and things like that.